Another important distinction between the pilot program and then the program that we will be launching is we will be paying the full contract rent amount. In the first iteration of the program, we calculated tenants' income and then had the tenants pay 30% of their adjusted gross income toward rent. And then we also created a ceiling where we would pay no more than a certain rental amount based on federal, what's called fair market rents. We have decided in this iteration to go ahead and pay the full contract rent amount, thereby simplifying the program and providing enhanced benefits to low-income renters. We will continue to pay directly to the landlord. Some other important distinctions between the last iteration and this iteration. Previously, we had required that applicants be on a standard lease. And this time around, we're going to be accepting both traditional and what we're calling non-traditional leases. One thing we heard from City Council is that they were very interested in serving people who live in different situations, which could include something like an extended stay hotel. We want to be as flexible as possible. Again, this program will launch. We're hoping to launch in August. And we have funding the way we have budgeted our funding. We have funding for at least 6 months. And the program, importantly, is a combination of the emergency rental assistance, which we discussed, and then also eviction prevention and tenant stabilization services. We know that with the looming lift on the eviction moratorium, which we're hearing that the JP courts may actually extend until September 30th. But we do know that there will be a backlog of eviction cases, and we want to make sure that we're working closely with our local community partners, including organizations like Texas Rear Fund Legal Aid, that will be providing direct representation in eviction court. Austin Tenants Council that will be providing enhanced tenant and landlord mediation services. All of these services are designed to, in concert with the emergency rental assistance, keep low-income renters in their homes. So I am happy to take questions, and I see that there's some in the chat. Okay, the first question I think I answered with respect to the 17 million. It comes from 3 different funding sources, and we'll be deploying them with a combination. It's really 3 different main programs. The lion's share will be going toward direct rental assistance. Then we will also be providing funding to nonprofits for tenant stabilization and eviction prevention services. And then we're also providing funding for direct community outreach. In fact, we will be releasing a solicitation, so a request for applications from local community-based organizations to provide outreach services. And we'll be releasing that this month with a 30-day response time. And we'll be providing between $1,000 and $50,000 in funding for these local community-based organizations to help us with outreach to serve the hardest to serve communities. One thing we know from our data, whether it's the Equity Action Team or Austin Public Health, communities of color are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And in addition, families with children and specifically African-American households are more than twice as likely to be evicted as white households. And so we really want to do real diligent, extensive outreach in order to reach communities that are really underrepresented and hard to serve. Okay, let's see. The next question, and Jeff, I'm just going to go through these in the chat, but jump in.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. If the household is approved for relief for 1 month, are they eligible to apply for a second, third, et cetera? So the way we have designed the program is that if the household is income eligible at 30% or below, they will be eligible for 3 months of rental assistance, and they only need to apply once, and then subsequent months. So the first month they apply, they submit their income information. The second and third month, they will just need to provide a certification that in fact their income has not changed, and they will be eligible for 3 months of rental assistance. That is the maximum per federal guidelines for this particular type of program. We can only provide up to 3 months of rental assistance. But for households between 30 and 80% of median family income, they will be eligible for 1 month of emergency rental assistance. Why wasn't the first round of funding bigger? Why didn't we offer 17 million in this funding to begin with? Okay, so I think that is a reference to our initial May program. The question was, why didn't we essentially go bigger in May, knowing that the need was so great? And so in May, that was prior to the time where we had either our CDBG CV allocation or our coronavirus relief allocation. The spending framework had not been approved by City Council yet. That didn't happen until June. So knowing that we wanted to get out ahead of potential evictions, also just an enormous need in the community, we pulled together some local funding that we had already budgeted within our department. It was through the Housing Trust Fund, and those are the funds that we deployed. This was in anticipation. We knew that there would be federal relief coming, but we didn't have access to those funds yet in May, which is why we utilized our Housing Trust Fund first. And now that the funding has been allocated and City Council has approved a framework for spending those funds programmatically, we are now moving forward with a much bigger and more enhanced program. Oh, KUT. If someone received assistance from the first rent program, can they apply this go around? And this is a fantastic question, which I actually don't have the answer to. That is something, as we put together our program guidelines, which are in draft format right now, we'll have to determine whether or not that would preclude folks from applying in this current round. And I actually can't answer that right now. Making the application process as simple and as accessible as possible. That is one of our goals. That is one of the reasons why we made some updates between the first pilot project and the current program, namely providing funding for the full contract rent amount, being more flexible in terms of the type of lease arrangement that the tenant is part of. And in terms of making the application process as simple as possible, our goal is to have an online application, which we did in the first iteration. It will be as few questions as possible just to determine basic eligibility. And then the applicants will go into a lottery. And we decided to continue a lottery process for really for equity reasons. We wanted to make sure, oftentimes first come, first serve tends to serve folks with the best internet access. And so we decided to go with a lottery process again. The lottery, if the name is called of the application, if they win the lottery, then they will be required to upload some documentation specifically to substantiate their income levels. And we have tried to make that as simple as possible, recognizing that many folks have alternative sources of income, maybe part of the gig economy. It's not as simple as just giving us a pay stub or giving us tax returns for previous years. So we're trying to be as flexible as possible. Our application will be mobile friendly, and we'll be working with our community partners to ensure that our community partners, for those who have access to internet challenges, barriers with access to internet or technology, our community partners will be helping us in order to reach those folks. So our goal is definitely to make this as simple as possible from both an administrative perspective, so from an internal perspective, but certainly most importantly from the tenant's perspective. We want to make this a simple process and accessible to as many folks as possible. Okay, I think that answered the question from Eugene Cho about making the process simple and accessible. Regarding the monthly lottery, is it completely random or will there be a need-based element? So the eligibility requirements are similar to the first iteration of rent. You're required to be have a lease or another contract requiring you to pay some form of rent. You're required to live within the full-purpose jurisdiction of the city of Austin, and you're required to be at or below 80% median family income. For the initial application process, we try to make that as simple as possible with asking very few questions, but that would basically weed out folks who maybe don't meet basic income qualifications or who don't meet being within the city of Austin limits. After that, that is what is going to determine who will be in the queue for the randomized lottery. And then once those applications are randomized and names are pulled, then we gather additional information, namely documentation on income verification, documentation on location within the city of Austin, and also access to a landlord because we pay the landlord directly, so the landlord needs to participate in the program. When we do all of that, that may disqualify some folks once we work through that and determine that in fact they don't live in the city of Austin or in fact they are over income. But the lottery process is random and is not need-based. There is no prioritization other than the basic eligibility requirements of living within the city of Austin limits, being on a lease or some other legally enforceable contract, and being at or below 80% median family income. Question about non-traditional rental situations. The most common one we were faced with in the first iteration was folks living in extended stay hotels. We are contemplating how broad or how narrowly we want to interpret that within our new program guidelines. We have been in communication with other peer cities across the state of Texas, some of whom have looked at things like subleases or more informal arrangements, such as I'm renting from my aunt, I'm renting a room. I may not have documentation or a long-term lease. We are looking at that right now to determine what would in fact fit within the parameters of the program. But what we know is that we want to contemplate more than just a standard TAA lease between a landlord and a tenant. And again, we want to be as flexible as possible. Okay, what percentage of renters are at risk of eviction or missed payments during the pandemic? It's interesting. I don't have an exact percentage for the city of Austin, but I will say that I've been following national data and regarding both missed rental payments and eviction data. And of course, there's been a moratorium at various different levels, state, local, and federal, which are often conflicting and sometimes very confusing, which has impacted the likelihood of eviction at this point in time. But in terms of missed rental payments, what we were seeing nationally, and I think just based on anecdotally what I'm hearing here locally, is that missed payments or rent collections were down in the month of May and June. We're down about 10% year over year. That's what we're seeing nationally. And one of the reasons it wasn't, frankly, larger than that was because of the federal funding. In addition to unemployment benefits, that $600 a week boost that is set to expire at the end of this month. And that provided essentially a bridge for a lot of folks and a safety net that unless Congress acts sometime soon, that again will expire at the end of this month and could have an enormous impact on August and subsequent month rent. Okay, kind of documents will renters need to submit, and then immigration status, which is a really important one. In terms of documentation, we'll be looking for income documentation, which can be taxes, it can be pay stubs, and it can be and we'll continue to have artists and musicians and other folks in the gig economy who may need to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of what type of income documentation that they provide. And we are committed to being as flexible as possible while recognizing that we do need some form of documentation of income in order to determine some basic eligibility. Regarding immigration status. So like with the first rent program, so the pilot program in May, this is open to all households, regardless of immigration status, in the city of Austin who are at or below 80% median family income. However, we are aware that we are utilizing for a large chunk of this program, we're utilizing federal funding, which does have some ties and oversight related to immigration status. So immigration citizenship is not a requirement. It's not a prerequisite for this program, and we want to reach as many people and as broadly as we can, regardless of citizenship status. That is one of the reasons that we've layered into this program for direct rental assistance, $2.5 million in local funds, so that we can be as flexible as possible with respect to citizenship status, and so that we can reach as many folks in need as possible. How long do we expect the current round of rental assistance to last, or how many people do you think we will be able to help? That's a great question. With the first iteration, 1.256 million in direct rental assistance, we served 1,681 households in that month. And the average rental assistance was a little over $750. We anticipate that the average rental assistance in this program will actually go up. Reason being, we are committed to paying the full contract rent amount, and we are not asking tenants who are eligible to pay 30% of their income toward the rental amount. So we anticipate that that will go up. In addition, we are, unlike with the first iteration of rent, we are paying for those folks who are 30% and below median family income. We are paying 3 months rental assistance. So our number of households between what we anticipate will be an increasing per household rent cost, we're also serving some folks for multiple months. So our unduplicated count of households will not scale naturally. But we do anticipate that we will be able to serve with the increased funding approximately 2,000 households a month. With respect to how long will the rental assistance last, the vast majority of the funding comes from coronavirus relief funds, which per federal statute are required to be expended by the end of December 2020. So we know that our funding will go through December 2020, and we have additional local funds as well as our federal CDBG-CV dollars that don't have a similar time limit on them. So we are anticipating that the program will go approximately 6 months, certainly through January of 2021. But we do plan on being as nimble as possible. And if we see increased need during certain months, being able to front load some funding or being able to stretch out our funding, provided we meet our requirements within the Department of Treasury for coronavirus relief funds, stretching out those funds as long as possible. Okay, who's eligible for 1 month and 3 months? So 1 month of rental assistance, which is what we did in our first iteration of rent, it was simply 1 month of rental assistance. And that's anybody who is eligible at or below 80% of the median family income. But for families or households that are at or below 30% median family income, so those are the lowest income households, they are the ones who would be eligible for 3 months of rental assistance. Eugene Cho, $600 federal unemployment benefit set to expire. Do we anticipate even more folks applying for Rent 2.0? We do anticipate more folks applying, and that's for a couple of reasons. As you appropriately pointed out, the federal unemployment benefit, or that $600 a week boost, is set to expire, which will put a lot of families in a very precarious financial situation. In addition, we have a really comprehensive and enhanced communication strategy. You'll recall back in May, we put the program together very quickly. We reached out to, of course, all of our media partners to get the word out, but we have a much more intentional and comprehensive communication strategy moving forward that counts on not just our internal communication staff, but community partners with deep, broad reach into the community. So our anticipation is that because of that communication strategy, that we'll be reaching many, many more folks, which will mean many more folks applying. Point of clarification regarding the lottery. No. Okay, I'm sorry. Audrey McGlinchey's question is a point of clarification about the lottery and how the process will work. So we are going to open up the application process in August. We don't have an exact date yet. We'll let you all know. Obviously, we want to get the word out as soon as the application process opens. If somebody is selected through that first lottery, which will most likely occur sometime during that month, if somebody is selected during that first lottery and they are 30% and below and eligible for subsequent months of rent, so up to 3 months of rent, they will not need to reapply. We are trying to make this as simple as possible. They will most likely need to provide some sort of self-certification that their income has not changed over those 3 months. We'll want to make sure that if in fact they were income qualified at 30% or below in that first month, that something dramatic didn't change in month 2 or month 3, but we will be providing that direct assistance to the landlord over those 3 months. It's not contingent on them winning the lottery in subsequent months or reapplying. Again, we're trying to make this as simple as possible.
Mandy, I think you may have reached the end of our questions.
Oh my gosh.
What a marathon. Thank you. Everyone on the call, if you have any other questions, now's the time to ask them. If nothing shows up in the chat, I'm assuming that all the questions have been answered. Of course, if something comes up while you're drafting your stories this afternoon or some other issues, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email, and we'll be happy to answer those. And I want to thank Mandy for taking her time this afternoon after doing her presentation at the committee meeting today. We certainly appreciate her doing this. And thank you all for participating.
And Jeff, I'm going through the questions. I mean, I do think I answered. There was one that stumped me because we actually don't know the answer yet. That was from Audrey McGlinchey. And that's something we need to work through, whether or not somebody who already received funding through the first iteration of rent would be eligible in this round. It's a great question, and we need to get an answer to that. But otherwise, I think we answered them.
We have a new one, last one.
We have a new one, and this is the MFI chart. And if it is the one that is posted on our website, I can't quite see, but that is correct. We have the latest median family income data posted on our website, which will give folks a breakdown by household size of the different income levels. And that was released in June, and so the latest one is on our website.
Okay, thank you again. Thank you, everyone. If you have any other questions, please let us know. And we're going to go ahead and end the conference now.